And yes, we are live. I'm back with my friend Brian. Brian, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Great to meet you. We met on Twitter, and I'm really excited because you're into Catholicism and MMA. So we're going to talk all about that in your company, what you got going with the clothing. But first, I like to have my guest walk us through the faith journey. Like, how were you raised? What were the ups and downs on the journey for you, and how did you end up where you are today? Just walk us through all that good stuff.
Yeah. I was actually born Protestant. Uh, my grandfather was what they would call a church planter. So he would travel around the country starting new churches. Specifically, he was Southern Baptist. And so I was raised Southern Baptist. There's a lot of different nuances between the different types of Baptists and Protestants. And eventually, I wanted to become a pastor like my grandfather. And so in high school, yeah, it must have been high school, I kind of set out to do that. Started like working at the church, doing different stuff, and um, ended up going to Bible school is what they would call it. So there were schools that are it's kind of like seminary where you would go and you just study the Bible and you take classes on theology, systematic theology, and you can do languages, stuff like that, so that I could become a pastor. And I ended up interning for a couple years at the church I grew up at as a youth pastor, and then I got into church history. So I've been studying biblical languages and got into church history and was reading the church fathers, and that just kind of changed the trajectory of my faith a lot. So I found myself a lot less Baptist, but wasn't quite Catholic. I grew up very, I guess, anti-Catholic. The school I went to, like pretty much every Wednesday, we would go to what they called chapel, and basically you'd hear the pastor talk about how terrible Catholics are, and it's like they basically believe the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon and the Pope's the Antichrist. And so we were fed a lot of this is what they believe and this is why they're wrong. And so I did that for a long time, and then as I was reading the Fathers, I started really questioning things. I had some different things that came up. I got kicked out of a few churches for preaching, basically like about things the church fathers said. It was kind of one church. It was like, hey, you can't talk about them or quote them. That's heresy. And it was like,
Wow.
well, that's crazy, you know. And so that was interesting. And then one church I got kicked out of. I was getting my master's and my PhD in acupuncture and herbal medicine, and I got accused of practicing witchcraft, so I got kicked out.
Wow.
It dawned on me like there's no church hierarchy in Protestantism. Some Protestant denominations have a pseudo form of hierarchy, but it doesn't really work. And so there's no like appeals, there's no like synods, so there's no real way to like, hey, like are Christians allowed to do this thing or not? Like there's no authority to say yes or no. So they just kick you out and then you go down the street to whatever other church you want to go to, I
Or
guess.
build your own, make your
Or
own.
build your own. Yeah. However you want to do it, right? And so that got me questioning. And actually, between that event and the church fathers, I ended up becoming Lutheran, which was like as close to Catholic as I could get. We became high church. Yeah, we were high church Lutheran. So it was like, very similar in terms of the order of the service and all of that. But, I couldn't quite bridge that gap and get over like Catholics being heretics. And eventually I started writing a book on Catholic heresy and how to convert Catholics to Protestantism. And some people at my church had asked me to do that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And so I decided for the first time ever to crack open a Catholic catechism, because I was like, if I'm going to write this book, I'm going to know what they say, right? I'm not just going to tout off like, oh, I've heard. Like, no, I'm going to know. And so I read the whole catechism.
Which catechism? The new one?
Yeah, the Universal Catechism. I don't know what year it was published.
90s, mid 90s.
Mid 90s, yeah. And it was like you just find out it's all like all the claims from Protestantism are kind of nonsense. And as I was reading through it, I just started finding myself kind of doing two things. First was I realized I didn't disagree with a lot, and the things I did disagree with, uh, there wasn't as much contention as I thought there was. And then the other thing was I found the catechism, it reflected the church fathers a lot more than anything I'd ever read up to that point, and so it was like that to me was very, it was very shaking. It was kind of a long process. I think the time I started reading the catechism to the time I entered the church was about 6 years. And
Right.
so overall, it was like a 12, 13-year journey from the time I started reading the church fathers to actually becoming Catholic. And so my wife and I entered the church 2019, I think, 2018, 2019, somewhere there's about. And yeah, we've been Catholic ever since. So that's, yeah,
Oh,
it's
pretty
pretty cool.
exciting.
I got 7 kids for anyone who's interested in knowing. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's very cool. I love a big family, especially a big Catholic family.
yeah,
So, just I always like to ask about the parents and the siblings. So, use discretion. Obviously, this is live, but if you can talk a little bit about, were there a lot of different worldviews going on as time went on? Because you changed course. Maybe some
yeah,
other people changed course. I've heard. I just talked to a Catholic, and one of her siblings is Baha'i of all things. Baha'i. I don't know if you've heard of the Baha'i faith.
no,
It's sort of a strange New Age mystical Islam kind of thing. But
yeah.
anyway, my point here is that as people grow up, they may have been raised Christian, but they don't always remain Christian. So I'm just wondering, any interesting stories to tell, or is everyone Protestant Christian to this day? How many siblings do you have?
I have one. I have just my brother
Okay,
and then my parents, and I think they would all say that they're um, Christian. Um,
still
uh,
Baptist.
yeah, my parents, are evangelical in some
Okay.
sense. They kind of non-denominational, whatever. They don't really go to church. But if you ask them like, "Hey, do you believe?" They're like, "Oh yeah, of course." Um, and my brother, I think, still goes to church. I'm not sure how often or anything. We're not super close. I know for a while he was actually kind of flirting with Catholicism, um,
Oh,
but that kind
oh,
of went away for whatever
oh,
reason.
oh.
Um, but yeah, now he goes to. Last I talked to him, he and his girlfriend were attending a Wesleyan church, which is formed, I
Yeah.
don't know, Puritanish persuasion. So
Oh,
um,
interesting.
yeah, but yeah, there's not really a lot to tell. I mean, my parents, they weren't really against us becoming Catholic or anything.
Okay.
I think there was a little bit of rub. I think like it was a little bit of a shock, I guess, and maybe for my in-laws even more so. Nobody really had anything to like. I don't know. There were no big hurdles. I mean, it was just like this is what we're doing, and everyone was like, whatever.
Yeah. What about your friends? Did you have friends that thought it was strange?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of friends who basically stopped talking to me.
Um,
Who were kind of just from my past as being a pastor and stuff. We had, I think, some friends who they were pretty shocked by it, and I wouldn't say it like damaged our friendship, but it kind of caused a little tension there for a while, and then they've
okay.
they've gotten over it because you get a lot of these Protestants that are like, "How can you do this? I know this Catholic who converted to Protestantism." And they're like, you should talk to him. And I was always being nice, like, okay, I'll talk to him. But every time it was like, okay, but they don't actually know
The
the
faith.
Catholic faith. They're espousing things that aren't true, and I don't know why that is, but it is. One of my best friends actually, we grew up at the same church. He also went to seminary, and he became Anglican.
Oh,
He's actually being ordained as an Anglican deacon, I think this week.
oh,
Um, and his mother well, she was not a Catholic nun, but she was discerning the religious life at one point. She had not taken her vows and then had converted to Protestantism. And so that was kind of interesting because she had some investment in me and was very concerned, like, why would you do this? And um, but it wasn't too big of a deal because my friend and I both kind of made the same shift together, and he went towards Anglicanism and I went towards the Catholic Church. But I think my reasoning anyone who was willing to talk to me, my reasonings were well enough founded that it wasn't like, whatever you're doing is terrible. Like they all felt like, I don't know if they felt good about it. They at least felt like they couldn't talk me out of it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, during your battle, your intellectual battle, because that's, that's the part we're most aware of. We're not usually aware of, our will and how our will is, uh, selfish or whatever. Like maybe we have, you know, uh, maybe we have subconscious reasons why we don't want to believe things. So we're sort of stuck just trusting what's going on with the reason and with our reading and with our intellect.
oh
And
yeah,
there's stuff happening in the heart. We're not necessarily aware of all of it. Baggage that we have and psychological prejudices and stuff like that. Like I was atheist for 25 years, born and raised Protestant, lost my faith at 14, atheist for 25 years, and I had an explicit bias against Christ and his church, especially the Catholic Church, because I'd studied Western philosophy. I knew that the Christian church was the Catholic Church, but I was biased against it. But my intellectual journey and my love of truth brought me to the church. So I'm just wondering, a lot of people say they have hurdles, they have difficulties, understanding a dogma or something like that. I didn't. For me, it was just easy. Was it easy for you, or did you have a couple of hurdles?
there were some hurdles. A lot of it was very easy, just because I was very well read. Like I very much live in my head. Like things are
Yeah,
very logical.
yeah.
Um, people. I remember being asked during RCIA like what my like emotional experience with God was, and it was like my experience with God is the books I've read. Like that's it. There was no like big moment. There was no like I didn't cry.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah,
no prayer. It was
yeah,
literally just I read things, and over the course of 10 years or so,
yeah,
I was like, you know what? I think this is true,
yeah,
and I've reasoned that. But there were certainly hurdles. Like as a Baptist, so Baptists don't believe in infant baptism. They
uh,
believe in what they call credo baptism. So it's just adults being baptized to profess the faith. And so that was a big one. I actually toiled through that as a theological belief for I don't know 4 or 5 years. When my first daughter was born, is when I started thinking about it.
uh,
And interestingly, the majority of Protestants also believe in paedo-baptism. So the Baptists are a very small subset of the Christian theology that rejects it. My kids, I sat thinking about that in this rocking chair for years, and they started calling it the baptism chair because every time they'd ask me, what are you reading, Dad, about baptism?" So that was a big one. It took a long time to kind of get over that, and a lot of digging into like firsthand sources and historical documents, and then I'd say pretty much everything else was very easy for me to come to, like recognizing the authority of tradition. It took time, but it was pretty easy. Marian doctrines were probably the other hard one,
okay.
because some of them are very easy, right? Like Mary, the mother of God. That's so simple.
Yeah,
Like Jesus is God, Mary's his mom, Mary, mother of God. It's like,
yeah,
oh, okay, yeah, like I
yeah,
can't really argue that one. But you have things like the Immaculate Conception
uh,
and the Assumption of Mary, and these things are not.
what about the perpetual virginity? Because Luther believed in that.
Luther did believe in that, at least at a certain point. Luther's doctrines on Mary changed substantially throughout time. He kind of became more. I
Pro.
don't say this to be mean, but it's like he became more schizophrenic as time went on, and more like he
Uh-huh,
was very Catholic, early
uh-huh.
Lutheranism, and then like he also believed in the Immaculate Conception when he first broke from the Catholic Church, and it like slowly bled away. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, that one, pretty much all of those were hard, because they're not explicitly taught in Scripture, right? Like there's inferences like Mary, Queen of Heaven. That was also an easy one. Just reading about the Queen Mother, but like
yeah,
these
yeah.
other ones are things where it's like you
What
really got.
about a lot of Protestants think that Jesus had brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that wasn't too hard for me to get over because I had studied original languages, and so my understanding even before I had considered becoming Catholic, of like reading a verse like Jesus's brothers, it was like, well, that word doesn't mean what you think it means, because it's used throughout the Greek New Testament to mean all kinds of, relations between a blood brother to cousins to, someone even greater than that. So it's like that to me wasn't too difficult, because I'd already recognized that there was more to what that verse could be interpreted as than just that he had blood brothers, or it could be half brothers, who knows what.
Yeah.
um,
Just for the record, my wife's Greek and she's very anti-Catholic, but she's also very annoyed by my genealogy because, in our Anglo-Saxon approach to family relationships, we have a very thorough understanding of what a cousin is. It's not just first cousins. You have like 13th cousin 6 times removed. You have got all kinds of cousins.
yeah,
So just to be clear, the most distant relationship you can have with any other human that has ever lived or ever will live is a cousin. You just need to know the xth cousin to the nth removed or whatever. You just need to understand how distant is that cousin. But we're all cousins. Like we're all cousins. That's the
yeah,
thing. That's the funny thing. It sounds like a hippy dippy thing to say, but like we are all literally all brothers in that biblical sense. All of
right,
us,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. So
So I
it's
think it's
it's
important to understand that, like from a humanitarian point of view, it's like, I believe in our first two parents, Adam and Eve, and that Eve was taken from the side miraculously. I believe all that stuff. I believe in the global flood. I believe in the Tower of Babel. I believe all of it. I believe all of it. And I'm a young Earth creationist. I believe the whole universe is like 7,000 years old or whatever. And no offense to anyone who doesn't happen to have that particular belief yet, but
do you
uh,
have you get done what is it, what's the name? There's a Catholic group out there that studies that.
Colby
Is
Center.
Colby Center,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I've interviewed Hugh a few times, and
Okay,
uh, Kevin Mark, he was the head of the Canadian Colby Center, and yeah, I'm friendly with them.
okay.
Uh, I discovered them after, but yeah, they're doing good work, and so you looked into it a little bit.
Well, yeah, so growing up as a Baptist, that's pretty much the norm. Like, so Answers
Okay.
in Genesis, if
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
heard of
yeah, yeah,
Answers in
of course, yeah,
Genesis,
yeah.
and Ham, like that's a big thing
I
amongst.
interviewed Kent Hovind of all people.
Okay, yeah, so that's a big thing amongst Baptists in particular, but evangelicals generally speaking, and so it's very common in Protestant. I grew up, that was the only way to view it, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is young Earth creation. I became Catholic, and I'd say I don't know what I think at the moment in terms of that, but I lean towards young Earth creationism predominantly because it has what I would consider better theopraxis. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
theologically, it is more practical to align Scripture and all of that with
yeah.
young Earth creationism. And generally, the pushback from Catholics tends to come from Augustine and his interpretation of creation. But if you read Augustine, he was very much a young Earth
He was
creationist.
the youngest Earth creationist because it was instant, didn't take 6 days. It was instantaneous.
Yeah. So it's,
But he
you
had
know,
his seminal reasons, and people like to think, oh, so he believed in, evolution or whatever because of the seminal reasons. But and it's a well-established fact that he was a little bit confused because of a mistranslation in so the Book of Maccabees, or what was it? Some book, I forget which book it was, that he was drawing inferences from different books, and he had a bad translation. He had a faulty translation. Like, what can you
yeah,
do? And
yeah,
he was always very circumspect and tentative with a lot of his speculations. But he was definitely a young Earth creationist, that's for sure. If you've read The City of God, he talks about how the world is not yet 6,000 years old, and yet the Hindus are making these ridiculous stories about long ages, and
yeah,
he's very clear about it.
yeah, yeah. He's very clear. Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, theologically, there's certain issues when you try to get into billions of years, and the idea of intelligently guided macro evolution. Like, microevolution makes a lot of sense, but you get into this like kind to kind, not even species to species, but kind to kind, or whatever's going on. And the theological implications are very big, to think that like God didn't create Adam and Eve, but just allowed a process to even a guided process to unfold, it substantially changes the meaning of Scripture, I
Yeah,
think.
well, my main thing is, as a Catholic, I'm always flashing this book on the screen, but it's my, just a very pithy summary of the dogmas, and there are a handful of dogmas that are violated by evolution, theistic evolution, or secular evolution. The first of which is that God created a good world, right? He didn't create thorns and thistles and disease and death.
Yeah.
He created a good world, right? And so that's a non-starter. Evolution's a non-starter. And it's a dogma that we evolve, not evolved, we descend from one human pair.
Mhm.
And it's a dogma that the soul is the form of the body. So you can't just have an ape, or, an ape giving birth to a human. It can't happen. It can't
Right.
happen. And if you want to say, well, it was a divine intervention, and, there were some physiological changes, and then God infused a human soul into it. Well, the soul is the form of the body. It's like you can't, it's not, you can't put a round peg in a square hole,
Right. You
you
can't
know?
really separate those two things, right?
Yeah.
It's um yeah, it's an interesting thing. So those are exactly the kind of questions I entertain when I think of like the theopraxis of Earth creationism versus theistic evolution. But it's not really something, I'd say, since I became Catholic, that I've really delved into and logically thought through one way or the other.
I don't think it's very, very important, but I'm very, very happy to have fallen on this side of the fence. And, even as an atheist, I never believed in evolution. Why would I? Why would I say that I evolved from an ape? I never believed that. Never. Not
Yeah.
even as an atheist. So, I'm even less likely to now that I'm Christian. So, the other dogma that's violated by evolution is the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. If Adam were conceived in the womb of any creature, he
Mm.
would necessarily, because he was without sin, have been immaculately conceived. And so this is what Saint Maximilian Kolbe says. That's why the Kolbe Center is called the Kolbe Center. Even
Okay.
though Maximilian Kolbe had some long, old Earth creationism, that's what he believed in. He believed the universe was old, but he didn't have death and disease and thorns and thistles before the fall, and he didn't have Adam being immaculate conceived. It was a creation. He has a
Yeah.
creation story. It just happens to be longer than mine, but that's fine. I'm not
Yeah.
concerned about the time. I'm really not concerned about the time. God can do what he wants to do, but I'm concerned about the dogmas not being violated.
Yeah. That's kind of where I've landed in a lot of my thoughts. It doesn't really matter, you know, the amount of time creation took so much as the fact that the dogmas can't be violated. Like, Adam and Eve had to have been created, as well as the idea that it has to be single parentage, right? As Paul talks about, sin entered the world through one man and death by sin. So you can't have multiple human beings developing and evolving at the same time, because it violates that teaching. It violates the fact that sin came to all men through one parentage, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it sounds like you're very similar to me temperamentally. I'm just wondering if since you converted 2018, you said
Yeah, I think so.
roughly 2018.
Roughly.
I'm just wondering, since you converted, if you've had a head-heart connection and you're starting to get teary sometimes at church or anything like that.
Not really. I'm I have I was diagnosed with Asperger's as a child,
Oh, no way.
so
Ah,
mild autism. So it just doesn't
ah.
really happen for me.
I've been
Um,
diagnosed with that uh, by my friends, but not by a professional.
so yeah, so I
Does
was
that count? Am I in the
I
club
don't know if
or?
that counts. Yeah, I feel like it's an overused thing, um,
Yeah.
but uh, it's something I've never really, I don't know, emotional experiences. I wouldn't say I don't have them, because I have. There are events that are big enough. It's not like I'm emotionless, but it's just not as big of a part of me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very content. Like if I describe to people, like, when I go to mass, it's like I go there, and the priest says the words of institution, or and uh, the the Eucharist, the bread is changed, the wine is changed, and for me, it's just very up here, and I'm
Yeah.
very happy and very content with that. Okay, that's Jesus, And it's like I don't have a big emotional experience every time I go to mass,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've never wanted one. Like, I'm
No.
very happy with exactly what I have. It's very cut and dry, and to me, it's very satisfying. It feels very stable. Like, it doesn't depend on me to feel a certain way when I go to mass. It's actually one of the things that I love about liturgical worship in general, is that I don't have to feel a specific way. I can just
Uh-huh.
show up and say the words, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that. You know, that's worship.
Yeah.
And certainly, when your heart's engaged, like, there's all those aspects where, the worship is, I guess we could say, more efficacious, more pure, but it's enough for me to say the words, and I feel good with that.
I want to give a shout out to a couple of friends in the live chat. I've got my friend Matt just showed up, and Tradcat man. I'm sorry, I've forgotten if I ever knew his name. I've forgotten it. But we're friends on Twitter, and anyway, Matt, who goes by Nugloff, he's asking, isn't there a conflict between MMA and Catholic moral teaching? I say no. Uh, he says, at least in a publicized sense. My thought is it conflicts against the dignity of the person. Far from it. No, this is great sportsmanship. We don't want to see any injuries. The fighters are very disciplined and mature, and they're Catholic. A lot of them. A lot of them are Catholic. What's
Yeah.
your answer?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I get this because they feel like maybe MMA is really violent. And if you watch a UFC fight or whatever, you're going to see blood and things like that. But you kind of, some people get throwbacks to, like, I think the Coliseum and stuff, but it's like,
No.
far be it from that. It's not the same. It's very sporting. There's a lot of rules. Competitor safety is a huge thing. My kids all compete, and I've gotten concerns from people the same thing, like, oh man, like, it's so violent. And it's like, a lot of especially localized competitions, like, you can't even knock people out. Like, you get disqualified for that. Like, if you're talking like amateur fights, or especially when kids are involved. But I don't think that even in the MMA where there's contact, that there's a violation of human dignity, because if anything, in one sense, we're showing, I think, the strength of humanity. Like, you go out there, just like any other sport, where you go out and you're working hard, you're pushing yourself beyond certain limits. You're showing, just, I guess, how far you can push the body and yourself. And in some ways, to me, it shows the glory of God, the image of God in man, that He created man, that is, we're strong and capable. We have this willpower, this intellect to be able to go out and do these great things. Um, but it's certainly, I think it's not some sort of violent, like, there's no bloodthirstiness in it. I think that's
Yeah.
the difficulty, where
Well,
people feel like it's violent, so there must be bloodthirst.
it's funny. It's funny because my wife doesn't quite understand why I like MMA. Um, and I can sit and watch it and it doesn't bother me until and unless there's an accident, like someone breaks a finger like they used to, or
Yeah,
has someone breaks a leg.
yeah,
It's
it
disgusting.
happens.
It's disgusting, right? And I'm just like,
Yeah,
ah. But up until that point, if there's no injury,
yeah,
they're just doing their thing. And the funny thing is that when I tried to watch back in the day, professional wrestling, the fake stuff, and
yeah,
it's too violent for me. It's like, because that is disgusting to me. It's supposed to be fake, but it's way more dangerous, and there are a lot of injuries, and it's a mockery. It's making a mockery of athleticism and sport. To me,
yeah.
that's my thing. But when I watch
Kind of a
MMA,
mockery
I don't get that
of
feeling.
violence too.
It's very
But yeah,
violent.
I totally agree, though. There's not a lot. And the other thing is that with something like an MMA fight, there's doctors ringside. It's like,
Yeah,
injuries are rare. When they do happen, like, they're stopping the fight. It's
yeah,
not like anybody's ever pushing you out. Like, oh, you got to get back out there and compete. You
no,
have doctors, like, these objective people. When you get cut, they're looking at your cut and being like, okay, no, 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 he can't go, because they've set up these rules. They don't, they can't have their fighters going blind. They can't have them having permanent jaw injuries. Some of it's just financial. Like, it's in their own
yeah,
interest to make
yeah.
the sport as civilized as
Because they
possible.
have doctors, they also have lawyers on set. So
That's correct. Yeah. And if you have a fighter, like, you put all that money into training them, you don't want them getting a permanent injury and being out. You would rather them lose the fight and bring them back for the next one. It's like, if you've got Conor McGregor or anyone else, you don't, Jorge Masvidal. You don't want any of them getting hurt. Um, there is certainly a sense, though, at least with some organizations, like the UFC in particular, I get a little, I think, frustrated with the amount of theatrics that are involved anymore. Like you have Conor McGregor is a great example where I don't know what he's like personally, but they built up a television character for him where he's like
Yeah.
angry all the time and
Yeah.
like smashing someone's bus.
Yeah. It's the WWE crap being imported into it. And I have to be honest, I sort of stopped watching when the Chinese bought the organization. That's
Yeah,
quite a few years ago now. But I
there's
just
still
kind of,
some
yeah.
good organizations out there though, like the PFL and the one organization. One is out of Singapore, and
Okay.
they're a lot more serious. Like it's
Okay.
just in the sense that you don't have the same level of theatrics. Where
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to say, to my friend Matt here, who asked about the morality of it, is like what I look for is when the two fighters love each other, after the fight they show the respect and
yeah,
the love. And I don't like if there's real antagonism, real hatred. Like it maybe sells tickets, but that's not what I'm into. I'm into
yeah,
love. I'm into love. Like if these guys love each other and they have, maybe they had a bit of competitive beef, but they squashed it and then they clap each other on the back and it's like
yeah,
you can see it. So that's what I look for. I don't get my rocks off looking at people that hate each other. Oh, kill him. You hate each other,
yeah.
whatever. I don't get off on that.
It's one of those, there's certainly people out there, both fighters and spectators,
Yeah,
and you could even say organizers, that I think have ill intent and
yeah, yeah,
don't have, I guess, a good moral foundation.
yeah.
But generally speaking, it's not the case. Like some of my best friends and like the people who I've become friends with the fastest have been through MMA. Like I can walk into a gym, don't know anybody, just on vacation, sit down and roll in jujitsu, and it's like you simulate bone breaking and murder essentially. And it's like at the end there's just complete respect, win or lose, whether
Yeah,
you're better, they're better, you're the
yeah, yeah,
same. It's like you both enjoy each other so much, you know a lot about each other.
yeah,
There's like this great mutual trust that people don't see in MMA. Like the
yeah.
the tap out seems like this very inconsequential thing. It's like you're trusting your life to somebody else to respect that tap, and that's something you don't see in a lot of sportsmanship. It's so.
Absolutely. Have you ever met or been in proximity to one of your heroes in MMA?
Uh, I have been in proximity to Chuck Liddell when I was
Ah,
younger.
ah,
Um, yeah, I did Koikan karate years ago. That's where I started as a kid, and he had
ah,
originally started in that. And
ah,
so I don't, it was like seminars, stuff like that. And then I've been to a Boss Rutan seminar. You know,
ah.
I still do stuff with, nowadays a lot of it's with Ludwig von, I'll murder his last name, but Bang Muay Thai. Ludwig von Bang? I don't know his name, but Bang Muay Thai is his thing. And
Okay,
around and you can do stuff through them. Like you can
okay,
just join up to the seminars. And a lot of
okay.
my heroes are just MMA or jiu-jitsu fighters. I do a
Yeah,
lot of, I follow people who strictly do jiu-jitsu as
okay.
well, people who do MMA. And so that's a lot of fun. I was just at a seminar a few weekends ago with a guy from Europe named Preet Mikkelsen, and he's pretty cool. And one of my favorite jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time actually is one of my coaches. He lives down in Florida,
Ah,
um, and Charles Harriet. And so it's like he comes up to Tennessee here whenever I can bring him, or I'll go down there. We'll
ah,
do video lessons or whatever, just to catch up and be like, hey, I've got this problem I can't solve. you know,
ah,
but it's cool. It's
cool.
a very open community. That's the interesting thing is, like I said, you get to know people in this interesting way. And I've
Yeah,
never met another community where, like as a sport, like I can be literally a nobody and just like, there's the really big name celebrities like from the UFC that probably wouldn't respond, but a lot of these guys that are like world champion IBJJF fighters or one championship fighters, you can like message them on Instagram and be like,
cool,
"Hey man, I was looking for some help on this thing," and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure, here I made this video."
cool.
Like,
Very
whoa,
cool.
that's like
Did
crazy
you
for a person to respond.
did you like the Gracie family, or did you have mixed feelings about them, or what?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I mean, in one sense, they're like I
Amazing.
have a lot of respect for them because they made MMA what it is today.
Yeah.
They made
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu what it is today, and so I think there's like we owe them that sort of respect and
Yeah.
acknowledgement. I also think they get a lot of hate because they're good business people.
Yeah.
Um, like happens in the news and they fly somebody out to do like some bully prevention camp for 2 weeks and they cover all the costs and they get all this publicity and you'll hear people like just get really pissy about it like, oh man, they're just in it for the money. Well, you know yeah, it's a business for them. That's how they make their entire family, like all these brothers and cousins and grandchildren and everything subsist upon jiu-jitsu. So yeah, they're
Did you
doing
have a favorite? Did you have a favorite in the races?
of the Gracies, not
Yeah.
really, no.
No.
um
Do you
I,
remember
I
the
mean,
long? You remember the long battles? The early UFC with Hoist or whatever his name is.
yeah, those. I mean, Hoist was a great fighter, and those are really. I liked all
He's
those.
very charismatic too. Very charismatic.
Very charismatic, and yeah, just the way they would present themselves and the confidence and
Mhm.
a lot of their fights against the Gracie family against Sakuraba and
Oh,
Kim.
I love him. Love
Like,
him.
yeah,
Love
it's
him.
just like,
Did
yeah,
you
those.
like Pride? Did you like Pride Fighting
Pride
Championship?
was great, man. I think I
Yeah.
told you through messages. Boss Rutan is one of my all-time
Yeah.
favorite fighters. Like,
Yeah.
if I could like get to know him. When I found out he was Catholic, that was pretty amazing. But he watching those old Pride fights is like that was my childhood, like growing up watching Pride fights.
It's funny, because we have our favorites, and a lot of it's just chemistry. Like you meet someone, you like them or you don't. That's just
Yeah,
chemistry. It might be the shape of the face. It might be anything. But some of the fighters we just don't like. Some we do, some we don't. But it's interesting.
yeah. It's like the Gracies. I have a lot of respect for them, but I've never been really like, oh man, I really like that guy. But for whatever
Right.
reason, Boss was always a really big one for me. I love his tactical stuff.
Yeah. The
Way
liver strikes and
way he'd stand. Oh, in the lever shot. That accent he's got. It's like
he's cool. He's Catholic, isn't he?
he is. Yeah, yeah. He's been interviewed by a few people. I if I recall, it was from the actor Kevin James, is Catholic, and he had told the story how he was. I think he was on set for filming something or whatever, and Kevin James, I guess, is just not particularly shy about his faith. He'll share it with people, but he's not like pushy or anything. And he just kept talking to Boss and got him to come listen to some priest or something give a talk, and that was the converting moment.
Cool.
Yeah, now he does a number of things like Exodus 90 and a few different programs.
Okay. Wow.
Help out.
Wow.
So yeah.
My friend Matt here has a couple extra questions for you. He's wondering does a Catholic man or woman have an obligation to pursue physical fitness and that sort of physical fitness perfection? So we'll start with that question.
Yeah. I'd say it's different for a man and a woman, but I think we have an obligation to care for our bodies. I think that's definitely true. I think when you see people who are morbidly obese, not trying to be mean to anybody, but it's when you're not taking care of yourself, it's I mean, you won't hear this said very much anymore, but like we forget that gluttony is a sin, and so is slothfulness. And obviously, there's health complications. There's things that occur, so it's not always that simple. But for some people, it is. For some people, it's literally just. I had a guy who worked for me for years who he was pretty overweight, and just around the time when he started working for me, he realized that like somebody told him like, hey, if you just ate healthy and exercised, you would lose weight. And he lost like 250 pounds.
Wow.
And feels so much better. And that's just kind of like that's how it is for some people. But I think we do have a duty to try to stay healthy. It's a duty to ourselves, take care of ourselves, good stewardship of our body, of the gift that God's given us, and as well as, especially as a man, I think you have a duty for your family to be in shape. I don't think we have to reach perfection. We don't need to be Arnold Schwarzenegger or be bodybuilders or be professional athletes, but I think we owe ourselves some duty to at least be in shape to be able to work, to play with your children, to provide for them, and do the work that God's given you. I mean, that's a duty for sure.
So his second question is about devotions and prayer. So what's your prayer life like, and do you have any devotions, Marian devotions or other devotions? Devotions to the saints or anything?
Yeah, my I guess my patron saint is Francis de Sales, because he's the patron saint to Protestants. So he lived in Geneva during the
Ah,
Reformation, and it's said that he converted like 40,000 Calvinists back to the Catholic faith.
wow.
And it's actually his writings are what allowed me to become Catholic. So the last kind of year of going through and thinking about Catholicism was very difficult for me, and Francis de Sales was like the guy that did it. Those Marian doctrines that I struggled with, he has a book where he gave homilies to the sisters at this particular convent. And I forget how many it is. It's like 40 or 50 homilies or something. They're not super long, half a page to a page each. And it's all about Mary. Every homily is about Mary.
Mm.
And I read through that book. And by the time I was done, I was like, it solved every problem. I was ready to go. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I keep that in my prayers as well. And then, typically, like my family's prayer life, I try to pray with my children, with my family. And usually we pray the rosary every day. We're actually kind of starting to get out of that. And I got a subscription. I think it's Bishop Barron does that, the Divine Office. There's it's like a $5 a month or something. You get a book that takes you through the liturgy of the hours, and it's all broken up. So, you just keep your bookmark in it, and today you pray this. So we've been kind of getting into that, and I really like that. I wish I had time to do everything, but I don't. And so it's like I enjoy the liturgy of the hours. You're praying through the Psalms and through the Scriptures, and yeah, there's just a lot there.
What about spontaneous ejaculatory prayers, as they call them? Just one word or just a thought, or raising your thoughts to God throughout the day?
Yeah, I guess I don't know that I mean, I guess I do that. I try to be more I guess a bit more thoughtful about that. Like if I'm running into trouble, I try, to say a prayer, which I guess would be akin to an ejaculatory prayer. Like it's not just, but they're not usually just one word. I guess, but
Yeah, well, it's just because it's my favorite type of prayer, just like because I can get distracted and just
yeah.
self-absorbed.
Hmm.
So just to break out of that, just to raise my thoughts and to just tell God that I love him, like I just say, God, I love you.
Yeah.
And it just breaks through that bubble because I'm very much in my head, like you said. I'm very much in my head, so it just helps me, and I do love God. I'm not making it up. I do love him.
Right. Yeah.
So it's he already knows, but it's more to remind me. It's more to get me out of myself, and to tell him that I love him. And usually I attach "please help me" to it, like "I love you, please help me," because I
Yeah.
need, no matter what I'm doing, even if things are going well, especially if things are going well, I need help, right? Because when things go well, it's just
Yeah.
self-contained. You think everything's good, you don't need God or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. You tend to block them out and stuff, and I tend to rely on Hail Mary. For me, I don't know why I have a hard time. It's very interesting. Maybe it's having come from Protestantism, but in Protestantism, like there really aren't pre-written prayers.
Set
Some
prayers.
people kind of do it, but everything is spontaneous. It's all supposed to
Ah,
be spontaneous and spirit led.
ah,
And I always grew up and I hated it. Like I did it, even as a pastor, I did, but I never knew what to say. Like when do you
ah,
end it? What's good
ah,
enough? What's not good enough?
ah.
And when I became Catholic, it was like this great relief. You mean if I just say what you wrote down, that's okay? And that was huge for me. So for me, like the Hail Mary, and then even like if I struggle with anger, I have a temper, and so oh my Jesus, or you know, that one tends to come out. But I just try to take time to use those. So that tends to be how I break up my day when I'm getting frustrated or something like that. I use one of those, and it's helpful to me because I don't have to think of what to say because I just never feel like my words are adequate enough.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, we're supposed to be like little children, so we're not like Moses was not eloquent, but God chose him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I don't think you should worry about that. But there's the Jesus prayer in the Eastern Orthodox is very good. I like to use the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. So I have that like a
yeah,
mantra that I do a lot of the time,
hmm
to ward off evil and just to be mindful of God. It's a good mantra, quote unquote, good prayer, but
yeah,
repetitive prayer that I just sort of put it on in the background, let it run.
yeah,
Just to because I'm subject to demonic attack like a lot of people are, but whether they know it or not, that's another question. I'm very aware of it. I'm very aware that the demons want my soul,
yeah.
and I'm subject to temptation with certain things like sloth, gluttony, lust.
Oh yeah,
So I got to keep the demons at bay.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to start adding that one in. My kids have this habit of they picked it up from someone at our parish, where like every time an ambulance or a fire truck or anything goes by, they say a prayer. I don't even know what they do, but it's like, yeah, they have this thing they all do, and it's like all the kids at the parish do it, and I think that's pretty cool because
Hey,
it's like
have you read Saint Francis de Sales little book on the sign of the cross?
I have, yes,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. It's one of my favorite prayers. I don't have to say anything. I
yeah,
do
you
the
just
silent sign
that's
of the
it.
cross. I could say in the name of the Father, Son, Holy, whatever. I could, but I like to just do it silent because I'm in
Yeah,
my head. I'm already too much in my head. So I like the silent prayer.
yeah,
No words. No
yep,
words.
yeah. It's just that. Yeah, the sign of the cross is one of those interesting things to me because was it Saint Anthony of the Desert? Was kind of the one who kind of instituted that sacramental. And I read his, the little bit of writings we have from him on it, and just the amount of power he ascribed to it. And you talk about like, demonic forces, or just bad things going on. And yeah, to me, that's one of those ones throughout the day constantly. It's like,
My wife is showing me a film from the 80s. It's called Fright Night. It's a Halloween film about a vampire, okay? And they have, they're doing all the tropes like, oh, how can I protect myself against the vampire? Oh, you need holy water and a cross or whatever. But they used an empty cross. I'm like, no, it's got to be a crucifix. Like, am
that
I
is a
wrong?
Protestant film, that
Like,
movie.
yeah, I know. That's what I said to my wife. But like, am I wrong or we need a crucifix, don't we, for
You need
the
a crucifix. That's right. Yeah.
Do you like my huge crucifix that I have on my desk?
Oh, that one's nice. Yeah.
I got it for like I bought it at a store. I don't know if I should go get it blessed or something. I got it at one of these antique stores or whatever. So maybe I should go get it blessed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But the power of the cross and the meditation on the sorrowful mysteries of the rosary, that's my favorite, the being mindful of that, and
Yeah.
all the saints talk about the power of the cross. And I belong to a few confraternities. One of them is the Precious Blood, Confraternity of the Precious Blood of
Okay.
Christ.
Yeah.
So I think a lot about you know the God man, how he suffered and died for us, and try to, like, I'm sick now, I've been sick for a week, and I try to take this opportunity, like, hey, this is an opportunity to suffer.
Yeah.
It's just that I hate suffering so much. I hate it. I hate it. I'm so weak, and I just want to feel better. I want to feel better. When I'm going to feel better? When am I going to feel better? But I have to, I'm trying to say, like, this is an opportunity to suffer.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, suffering?
So suffering is a good topic for me. Yeah. That's one of those ones, when you grow up Protestant, I would say this is true. Most things when Catholics converts talk about Protestantism, they tend to be generalizations, because there's so much nuance. But I would say, more general with less nuance. You could say Protestants tend to not really have value for suffering. Like they're not really practicing fasting, like chastity of abstinence or meat. Um, that those sort of like bodily disciplines are kind of seen as like they're just not necessary. Those are works. You don't need works to be saved. I grew up very like you don't need any of that. And becoming Catholic, you hear people talk about like, oh, you should think of suffering as like a virtue. And it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And you start rethinking about that. And as an MMA guy, my favorite thing, like the reason Catholics should do MMA, especially if you only want to do one thing or have time for one, you should pick jujitsu because all it is suffering. Especially when you first start, like everyone starts at the bottom, you're going to stink. You're being squished by somebody else. It's terrible. It's the worst workout experience you could ever have. And then you're going to go through it and you're going to be happy about it. And then over time, you build up this skill and you suffer less. And that's like the most interesting thing about it is like that kind of connection was able to help me really frame my thinking of suffering in Catholicism, where it was like, suffering really does build something up in you. Like it builds up a tolerance, a toughness, mental fortitude, spiritual fortitude. And over time, you gain these skills which allow you to suffer more and bear up under more difficulty. And, I think that's completely true, and I would say like this past year, for Lent, I actually tried a 40-day fast, like a proper old-fashioned, like one meal a day. That was it. My only other allowance is just because I teach so many MMA classes, I had to do protein shakes and electrolytes. It was like, otherwise I'd pass out. I tried it without and I couldn't do it. So it was like, okay, protein shakes and electrolytes so I can get through classes. So I'd have like a protein shake every day and some electrolytes and this one meal. And it was awful. Like I almost gave up at the first week, like 3 days in. And it was one of the most humbling things because like my blood sugars were dropping. I felt super sick. And it was like you realize through the suffering, it was like it brought me down a few pegs. Like I'm not as tough as I thought. Like here I am, this MMA guy. I coach amateur fighters. I've had a hand in coaching some pro fighters, and it's like you think you're tough because you can fight people, and then you can't even fast for 3 days. Like like how weak can I be? But by the end of it, like by the end of 40 days and getting through there, it was just like it was immensely good for me. Like I saw improvements in my temper. And struggling with things like slothfulness, lust, like all these things that I would say as men that you typically struggle through. Like if you can master your body's desire to eat, that's a pretty good foundation. Like if you can stand up under that suffering, you can suffer under a lot more things. And it's, I think that we should embrace that. We should use that as a way to train our bodies and our mind and our spirit and build it up.
I want to ask you about the Desert Fathers and the Philokalia, but first I just want to, before I forget, I want to tell you my pet peeve with mixed martial arts, which is the weight cutting. I'm opposed to the weight cut. I'm opposed to that. What I want is that on fight day, you show up and it's your walk around weight, and you say, hey, do you want to fight? Do you want to fight me? Well, how much do you weigh? Well, I weigh 170 or whatever it is. Okay, well, I'm close enough. I think I could take you and just fight. Like, that's what I want. I want people to fight at their walk around weight.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
I agree. To me, the weight cutting is
it's needless.
Parts. It's an evil, because it's it basically you could think of it as a form of an eating disorder, but it's like there's I think if you were a good fighter, if you were really disciplined, if you wanted to keep weight classes and like, I'm like 170 to 175. If I wanted to fight at 169 and under, like just be disciplined and be that weight all the time. Like don't eat pizza every week, multiple times. And then a week before your fight, starve yourself half to death and come out with a cruddy performance. Like just discipline yourself and be 169 or fight at the 175 weight. Like, I totally agree. I hate that.
The other thing I hate is the cheating with performance enhancing drugs. I hate that.
Yes, that's terrible.
I hate that.
Depending on the organizations, it's actually worse in jiu-jitsu than it is in MMA.
Really?
So in MMA, they at least like with the UFC, there's some drug testing. I don't know that they ban all substances. And I think their contract with the USADA is actually up in a few weeks. And so I don't know what they're doing after that, if they're replacing it with some private company or
really?
If they're just going to allow performance enhancement drugs.
That's the other alternative. They could go that route. Yeah.
But it's terrible. So like, in jiu-jitsu, like the IBJJF bans it. at least in theory. But you get into other organizations like the ADCC or like whatever, and they don't really care. And so you have like some of the top guys like Gordon Ryan is like in his 20s and he looks like he's like 60 or 70. Like just in terms of like his face and his hair is white. And you look at like his weight changes constantly. And it's like it can't be healthy. But he's like, he loves it. He's like, oh, we should just get rid of all the rules. Everybody should do steroids. It'll be awesome. But I hate it because the whole point of sports, like going back to like the original Olympics and things, like I was talking about showing the image of God, like his creation, the beauty of his creation is to see like how far can you push your body, the human body, not how far can I artificially push it on all these drugs. Like I have very little respect for the fighters that come out with they're on performance enhancing drugs and then they're like, I'm the best, but you wouldn't be the best, or it would be much, much harder if you would get off those drugs, you know?
I just Googled Gordon Ryan. I have seen him perform, but that was years ago when he had dark hair, and I can't believe the look of him.
Crazy.
I
Yeah.
can't believe it. And the muscles, the bloated muscles, it's not attractive either.
No, yeah,
It's not attractive.
It's crazy. Yeah, that was yeah, I showed a picture of him to my wife recently. She does jujitsu, doesn't do MMA, but just some jujitsu, and she'd never seen him. And I was like, "How old do you think this guy is?" And she's like, "He's like your dad's age. Like, I don't know, like 58, 69." I was like, "No, he's like 24."
Oh my God.
Way younger than I am.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know, a couple of people have a reputation in UFC for being clean, you know, natural, whatever. I don't know if it's true or not, but I always liked Randy Couture.
Yeah.
I like to think he was natural. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how many of them you hear that, you know, some guys are really like pessimistic. They're like, everybody does performance enhancing drugs, and it's like, I just don't know that that's true. I think some guys have more integrity. Like Lyoto Machida, he's another big fighter of mine because
I love him.
Exempling.
I like all the karate, all the high level karate guys. I love.
They have that old fashioned traditional Japanese karate, like respect, loving your opponent, like, you know, the fight begins at end, you know. Yeah, like
amazing.
there's a guy who was just good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah, he was one of my all-time favorites. Magical. It's just magical, you know.
Yeah. But again, like I don't know if there's all these guys. I don't know.
We'll find out on Judgment Day. We're gonna find out on Judgment Day.
Right, yeah.
You know who I think was juiced up, but I like his personality is Tito Ortiz. I saw him on the Ultimate Fighter reality show, and he's a sweetheart. Yeah. He's a sweetheart, man. I always hated him. I hated him until I saw it. The guy's a sweetheart. He cares. Yeah. He cares.
Yeah, there's a big difference, I think, like the personality they'll put on screen, and then when you get to these more personal connections, you're like, oh, actually, that guy, I think I could hang out with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys for sure.
I got a list here of the 10 most controversial fighters on UFC, because that's the main one that I watch. I want to get your take on this. They listed George St. Pierre as controversial. What do you think about that?
I could see that because
they said that he greased himself up or something. I don't know, when he fought BJ Penn. I love BJ Penn too, by the way, even though he's a prick, but I love him.
Right. Yeah. I could see people. I don't know that. Yeah, that he greased himself up. You know, that's what the guy. You know, whenever a fighter enters a ring, like you see it, they usually have it on camera. They come down and they stand with their arms out.
Yeah. They do the Vaseline.
Their hair and, you know, the shorts, like cuffs on, all this. Like, you know, if he greased himself up, then that means that guy was in on it too. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. You know, that guy's supposed to, he feels your skin, and he's supposed to be like, whoa, hey, because I've seen them stop people because they're too sweaty. They just came out of the sauna or whatever, and they'll get towels out and like dry them off.
Oh yeah.
They're too. It's like you got to go into the ring dry. You can't go into the ring wet. You know, whatever sweat you do in the ring, that's all part of the game. But you can't come into it slippery. You know.
I don't know why they're listing Michael Bisping. I like him a lot too. His fight, Michael Bisping, when he fought GSP, was it GSP that he fought a couple of years ago? That was amazing.
I think so. Yeah. He's a good fighter. He's on the list of most controversial fighters.
Yeah, I don't know why. And then
what is their claim for this?
They said It said he may not be known as one of the controversial. Possess some sort of abrasive distinctions from other middleweights, known for saying whatever he wants. Okay, what, he has a big mouth? That's what makes him controversial.
Which
There's
I mean, I guess
It's a
I
stupid article. It's a stupid article. I don't agree with it, but it's got some big names on it. That's why I'm just going through it with you.
yeah, I feel
Rampage Jackson, what'd you think of him? He's like a big baby.
I don't even know that I've watched any of his fights, to be
No?
honest.
Can you
No,
picture him? I think he used to be in Pride too.
he did. Yeah, he's actually why are they, yeah, what's oh, is he controversial because he became a Hollywood movie star instead of an MMA
Yeah,
fighter?
yeah, that's what they're saying. Who cares?
I
Who
mean,
who cares?
what's funny is I bet Ronda Rousey's not on this list.
Oh, I love her.
She left the UFC to go be a
I loved to
WWE
hate her. I
fighter.
used to love to hate her. I really loved watching her fight when she was winning. And
Yeah,
then as soon as she lost, I'm like, oh, I just was so disappointed.
you
But
know,
it was spectacular, wasn't it? Was she just
yeah.
mismatched with everyone or what?
I think the at that time the
Talent pool wasn't there?
female talent pool was just low. Like it wasn't really built up. There wasn't a lot of money in it for the females yet. She
But
really changed the game.
her fighting was exciting, man.
Yeah, she set the bar so high.
She's judo, right?
Yeah, she had a judo background, and that's you see the same thing kind of happening at the PFL. Kayla Harrison's an Olympic judo medalist, and she's been
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
running through.
She's doing
But
arm bars and stuff.
oh yeah, yeah, and just hitting that ogoshi, that hip throw all day long on
Oh, I
people.
love that.
And I think what happened to Ronda though is like there's a lot of pressure when you're that good,
Yeah.
and you see it like different fighters that manifest in different ways. I don't want to say she had a mental breakdown, but it kind of looked that way, right? Like she definitely struggled after losing because you have all that pressure, and then to lose is like hard to come back from. I mean, you hear about there's a woman, Angela Lee.
Okay.
If they're from they compete in the one
Okay.
fighting championships out in Singapore, and her sister Victoria just committed suicide like last year, and that was a big thing
Oh.
where they they just kind of revealed that that's what had happened, and a lot of it came down to like the pressure of being a pro fighter and having so much on you. And Angela actually, she just started a nonprofit specifically to help people who are having those sorts of thoughts, and just help them reach out to people having suicides, particularly athletes. I think is kind of their focus, because I guess she, as the older sister, had also made an attempt but
Oh.
was thankfully failed, and now she's still around. And but she shared her story, and it was basically like that, where she had all this pressure. She was really successful, she was doing this stuff, and then I think she didn't make weight for a fight, and it was like just the
Oh.
emotional like baggage just was too much. And it's interesting to see. It's at like any high end sports athlete, like it's people put a lot of pressure on you, there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
Like I think that it's not great.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't talk about the corruption and throwing fights and that sort of thing. I don't even want to think about I don't want to think about that. That's disgusting.
It happens though.
It's
It just
disgusting.
I mean, even you were talking about the Gracies, and I was saying I have controversial opinions about them, but it's like, again, a lot of respect for a lot of what they did, but there's a lot of evidence out there that they had people throw fights, or they would hand pick people they knew they could
Mm,
beat, turn
yeah.
down other fights.
Mm.
I hear stories again. I couldn't corroborate them or not. I don't know what evidence there is, but you hear about them like in Brazil when they would do fights. They'd like their family would go like get in a gang fight with the other person like the day before to injure them, and then they'd and then they'd do this fight. And it's like I don't know how much of that is true, but stuff like that happens. The high stakes in the
Yeah.
MMA world, and
Yeah. There's a guy I don't like too much. He's a bad boy. I want to like him, but I just don't like him. It's Josh Koscheck.
cost check.
Because he
Yeah,
hates pretended to hate GSP, or he hates GSP without, he disrespected GSP. He's like, come on, man.
yeah,
It's the nicest human on earth. One of my favorite fighters is Nick Diaz. Of course, he's controversial.
of course.
Nick and Nate, love them both. Love them both.
You gotta love the first. I think I'm looking at the same article where it's like Nick Diaz bashes the media.
Is that what it says?
That's why.
Oh yeah. We're looking at the same article. Yeah, we're looking at the same article. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
why they're mad at him. Like I don't know what they could dislike about him other than he bashes the
This
media.
was written by a 12-year-old. This article was written by a 12-year-old or something. And then Chael Sonnen, I like him. He's pompous or whatever, but I happen to like him.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the guys that are a little bit pompous, but he, whatever.
He's so damn handsome. Oh, I love number 4, Chris Lieben. I love the train wreck guy with the big heart, Chris Lieben. Do you remember him at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Sweetheart. Yeah. He's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
He was a hot mess. He was a real hot mess alcoholic.
Yeah. Had the pink or like the red hair.
Red hair, yeah. Troubled kid, very troubled kid, but he was a sweet guy.
Yeah.
Ken Shamrock, I never liked this guy. Never liked him.
No?
No.
Yeah. He
looks like a big
WWE, yeah. I didn't really care for him.
Big Ken doll.
Yeah. He came around in the he was in the early UFC fights, I think, right?
Yeah.
UFC.
And he was a coach actually on The Ultimate Fighter, and he didn't do a great job, I'm sorry to say. Like, he just wasn't that great. Brock Lesnar, I don't know what to think of Brock Lesnar. Like, it's just like a sideshow, or what was that, real, or what was that? He had a huge back.
I was his back.
His back was huge.
Yeah, it was like, can you glide with those? Like that? I don't know. But he, I always felt like he was just a big name from WWE they brought over, and they were like, yeah, you can try it out. You're huge.
It was crazy, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of the guy who beat the first guy to beat him. I like this guy. He's a bit arrogant, but I like him. He's a big heavyweight with jiu-jitsu. Remember?
The first guy that beat Brock Lesnar?
Yeah.
I don't remember who that was.
Just think, he's like a cocky guy, curly hair, got a smirk on his face.
Oh man.
You know this guy. Come on, you know this guy.
Was it Overeem?
No. No, that's like a black dude. No. Heavyweight. UFC.
His first fight was back like in 2000. Was it? He fought Randy Couture and Frank Mir and
Frank Mir. Frank Mir. That's what I'm talking about.
Mir. Okay. Yeah.
I've always liked him because he's like got this attitude, like he's very arrogant, smirky, and really good. He moves really well for a big guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the fight when he beat Brock Lesnar or not.
I don't. Yeah, that was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch it now. He's one of those fighters though where it's like watching somebody do a graceful dance when you're watching him do jiu-jitsu. Like you just wouldn't imagine a big guy like that could move so smooth. And like I fought a guy that was like that in the gym one time. We were just doing jiu-jitsu and he was like 275, I think.
Wow.
280, and so much bigger than me. And I'm rolling around with him, but it was like seriously, it was like a dance. Like this guy was huge, but he moved smoother than me, had great flexibility, controlled his weight. Like I didn't feel like I was being, he was just going to sit me and smother me. Like he used technique, he controlled himself, and it was just like, I came up afterwards and I was like, dude, this is like one of the best roles I've ever had. And I never imagined it again. Like looking at him, you wouldn't guess it. He's just a giant,
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, just
amazing talent. Did you like John Jones? He's controversial. He should have been on this list. John Jones should have been on this list.
Yeah.
I loved watching him fight. Wow.
It's funny, even that list, like I would have put like controversial fighters, you think like, Jorge Masvidal or like shoot, why did my mind go blank? But
Conor McGregor.
Like you talk about, like there's a guy, attacking people's buses and like
that was horrible.
Yeah.
That was
a lot
horrible.
of stuff. That's like both of those guys, Jorge Masvidal and Conor McGregor. I feel like they plan these stunts, and then they get arrested, and then it's like they never go to jail, and you're like, you never went to jail or got fined or anything. This must have been fake.
Did you like Anderson Silva? Did you like him at all?
I did. I always really liked his style of fighting.
Did he
You
get
know,
too cocky at times?
yeah,
Remember when he broke his leg? That was disgusting.
it was very bad. Yeah. Well,
What fight
that
was that? Who was he fighting?
I don't remember. That was
That was
fuck,
disgusting.
what was that
Who
like
wins the fight in that
2015?
case, by the way? He loses?
He loses the fight because he can't continue. It's
Okay.
a technical knockout.
Okay.
But he even that right there, it was like pride. Like he was older, he shouldn't have been fighting anymore. I think. Um, but it's hard to let go, I guess, when you're that good. But yeah,
He was so graceful.
yeah,
Oh, Chris Weidman, that's one of the guys I don't like. I just don't like him for whatever reason. Oh my God, I just saw the video of his leg breaking. Oh,
yeah. Don't do
disgusting.
that. Don't watch that again.
Oh
It was
God.
rough. It was rough to watch. But Anderson Silva, I always really liked him. Like his movement, his tacticals, like all of that. I didn't care for his showboating. He'd put his
Yeah.
hands down and like dance. Come on. But yeah, he did. He started it, I think, in traditional martial arts. Like I think he did like Wing Chun Kung Fu or something like that
Ah,
from him, and that was like what got him going. And
ah.
yeah, he's the Wing Chun guys. They kind of latch onto him. They're like Wing Chun works. Anderson Silva does it, and you're like,
Uh, does it though?
hey, does he though? I don't know that he does.
Is it like was it is it Taekwondo? Is that the one that gets no respect? Is it Taekwondo?
I don't know. I feel like none of them get respect anymore. Taekwondo, yeah, that's the one that's predominantly kicking, and they're always fighting with their hands down. I don't,
Okay. Well,
I,
they say what they say in MMA, like in the popular stuff that I watch, UFC and whatever, the commentators are always saying, the base is wrestling, which undoubtedly is there, boxing, kickboxing, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
yeah,
Those are the four they typically emphasize that you have to have these well-rounded.
yep,
You agree with that?
yeah, I'd agree with that pretty much. And you can dive into the like wrestling and jiu-jitsu. They're like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They are what they are. I think you could substitute your jiu-jitsu or wrestling for good judo, but like as long you just have to put some time into your ground game. See, I kind of throw that into there,
Uh,
and then like boxing and kickboxing. You could flesh that out. Like you've seen historically like
striking.
a lot of good like Kyokushin guys. Like their kickboxing comes from karate. Typically nowadays it's Muay Thai. Most guys they're doing
Uh,
Muay Thai, kickboxing base.
okay.
But some of those, karate styles and things, they if you train them practically and you really put them to the test, like you can do a lot with it. But I think generally speaking, most other martial arts nowadays are just it's been too many years of not actually using them. You know what I mean? Like they've
Uh,
just
uh,
it's like modern day karate and taekwondo is just designed around these like touch based sparrings, little tappings for points, and
oh.
don't actually learn how to use their techniques effectively. And so it's like they just don't translate well. But you see it. You see it occasionally. You see a taekwondo guy come out. He's really good. You see a kyokushin guy come out, and
How would you fare when they say wrestling? Are they talking Greco-Roman? Is that the main one?
yeah, they're talking like Greco-Roman freestyling or
How could
CSW.
you handle yourself? Like, do you think you could handle your business with a really good wrestler?
I've wrestled a lot of them. So actually, at my MMA gym, I've got one of my guys was like a Nebraska state champ. So he's Nebraska wrestling is really big out there. Um, he actually coaches a lot of our new nogi. Even though like from a jiu-jitsu perspective, he's just getting his he'll be getting his blue belt this the end of this year. But like his wrestling, that's just because his guard game and stuff like that isn't the same on the same level. But his like his wrestling, his takedown, his no-gi game is phenomenal. And then I've wrestled. There's a gym out here in Knoxville where they've got a couple D1 wrestlers that do jujitsu at it, and I go out there and wrestle all the time, and I handle myself just fine. I
Okay.
mean, they're hard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, they're easy, but like, I mean, it's not like you're dealing with a white belt, even though a lot of times they'll have one on.
Um,
It's like they're good. They wrestle at the level of like blue belts, purple belts, brown belts. Some of them even black belts. Like they're so good they'll go toe to toe with black belts. So even my wrestler, hitting him is a pain in the butt. Like I have black belts that come in my gym and they're just like I don't want to wrestle with him anymore. Like it just
Is there
So,
overlap? Is there technical overlap between freestyle wrestling or Greco-Roman and the jiu-jitsu, like in terms of basic
oh
grappling
yeah,
and
like
stuff?
'cause all your stand up is the same. So your double
Okay.
leg, single legs, you can utilize
Okay.
all those takedowns. All of your pins are the same.
Okay.
The place where it differentiates is typically like Greco-Roman wrestling. Depending on the organization, the way you lose is by having your shoulders touch the mat on your back, and that's just not true in jiu-jitsu. So a lot of times, like my wrestler, when he first started, he would get people there, and it's like, well, the match isn't over, so now I can escape and get out and do something. And it's like it took him a while to adjust and realize, like, oh, I have to actually submit you. And then the other
Uh-huh.
place, like, they don't play guard because they don't want to be on their back, so it
Uh,
takes a little
uh,
while to train that
uh.
up. My he comes in, and to this day, it's like, okay, your first 3 rounds are on your back. Stay on your back the whole time. You pull guard and you sit there, and he's gotten
Wow.
really good at it now.
Wow.
But that's just kind of
It's
how
not in his comfort zone. You
not
remember,
as
I don't know if you remember the early days, Mark Coleman would make a big deal about wrestling, 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 and I don't know if you remember him.
yeah. There's something to say about it. Like, there's a lot of debate about which one's better. I think the wrestlers tend to have they just have a really good foundation because jujitsu, there's so much. And like when you go to a typical jujitsu class, it's like you learn something new every class typically. And if you have a good instructor, it's all connected and it kind of builds. And so there's a way to synthesize it and use it. But a lot of gyms, it's just like it's a free for all. Every day it's just something different. You have no idea what's going on. But wrestlers, it's like here's these very few techniques. They're high success rate. Like drill them from the time you're 6 years old in elementary school until you all the way through college. And as you go, you actually like narrow down what you use and specialize more and more and
Uh,
more.
uh,
And it's so their foundation is just like it's so good. Like my wrestler, the things that my wrestler does, he does so much better than I do anything.
uh,
But so it's just a solid foundation. Like he's so confident because if he gets to certain positions, he knows he'll get out. It doesn't matter who you are, he's going to get out. And
that's
so
pretty cool.
yeah,
A lot of the time, the stereotype of the wrestler is the functional strength. Maybe they don't look like a Greek god, with the six pack or whatever, but there's that functional strength,
yeah,
that's the sort of image I have is like they're some of the strongest people,
oh
you know.
yeah. I think they know how to use their body. You talk about function, right? They can use their whole body together in ways that it just doesn't make sense to the rest of us. Like I just can't comprehend it sometimes. They know they put every muscle into it in just the right way, and they don't activate any muscle that's unnecessary. And it's like, I mean,
Wow.
it's art to watch a wrestler really go at it.
But I
So
do have a prejudice. I do think it's like a sort of a lowbrow sport. I do have that prejudice where I think of BJJ is very like, human chess, and I think of wrestling, basically your knuckle dragger. Like that's just a stereotype in my head.
I think I can see why it gets that stereotype, and I guess I probably kind of thought it that way a little too until I got into it more. And there's a lot of strategy involved in wrestling,
Yeah,
um, and just the way the techniques work. But I would say
sophisticated.
it's not as sophisticated, yeah. Because even sometimes I wrestle, I'm like, okay, and when this fails, what do you do? Oh, just do it again and again and again and again, and eventually, if you do it 10 times in a row, really fast and hard, you'll get out. I'm like, that's true, but
Yeah.
I bet there's another way. Because on the flip side, like if I played like devil's advocate, wrestlers are very very active. They have high like intensity, great cardio, and jiu-jitsu people are just lazy. Like jiu-jitsu is a lazy man's sport. Like you just sit on your butt, pull guard. And I'm saying this as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Like, and the higher up you get, the better you get, the more lazy you are, and the worse your cardio is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my white belts and my blue belts have better cardio than like
That's
all the higher belts at the gym. But we seem like we're better because we don't do as much. We're just like sitting there,
Do you
not
remember
exerting.
Jeremy? Do you remember Jeremy Horn? He was a very unassuming looking guy. Do you remember him?
Yeah,
Jeremy Horn?
I think so.
He was quite something. He didn't win a lot. He did not win a lot, but he was
Oh
very impressive. He was
yeah.
very
Yep.
impressive.
Yeah, I'm looking at photos of him. Yeah, he was very. It
Remember
was
him?
yeah, not much of a.
Not much to
There,
look at,
yeah,
but
he's not like super ripped or anything. Yeah, you look at him, he's not a great fighter, but yeah, he won a ton.
and when he
But
lost, I mean, it was always entertaining. There are a lot of guys like that. You know, in the sport, they have these terms like gatekeeper or this and that and the other thing. I don't really understand what they're talking about. Like there's some sort of like levels you got to break through into the top, whatever. You know, that side of it doesn't interest me as much. You know, who's at the top or whatever. Obviously, the best guys usually are more entertaining to watch. Not always, but
yeah,
um, you know, what is it like? What is that side of the competition like? The really competitive side and like the psychology and how to break through and how do you deal with that? That seems like more of a burden than the physical stuff.
it is. Well, depending on the organizations, it's kind of complicated too, because certain organizations are invite only and stuff. Like if you look at the UFC, like they're not just interested in the best competitor; they're interested in making money. And
Yeah.
so, if you have a personality that
Uh,
sells millions of dollars in pay-per-view, but you're not as good as another
uh,
fighter, they'll sandbag the other fighter so that fight. Like, well, and what I mean by that is, I don't think they typically throw fights, but what they just won't match you against them. And that better fighter, if he can't bring in money, they just won't give him fights.
I see.
And so it's like just because someone's the top or they're the champion
Right, right.
doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. And even competitively, like if you go to like local jiu-jitsu tournaments or even big name jiu-jitsu tournaments, like there's a certain amount of luck. Like uh, sometimes there's a guy that's like he's good, but maybe not super good, and he gets put with the best guy right from the get-go when the best guy has full energy. And maybe guy number two, his strategy is cardio. And so like if you put them on opposite ends and they battle through 20 people and they get to the center, guy number two beats guy number one because he has better.
Ha, ha, ha.
But if you put them on the same side and they fight within the first one or two fights, guy
Uh,
number one beats guy number two because he's better.
uh, uh,
And so there's like it's just
different
more
parameter.
complicated.
Yeah, different. It's many different things to take into consideration.
You do. And then there's things like I've been doing jujitsu. I've been training for 30 years, and I've been doing jujitsu for like 7. And it's just interesting. It's like jujitsu is a great example where it's like I teach, I coach, I have a gym, I'm doing pretty well. I'm confident in my skills against most people, but there are guys who come in like as white belts. Like they'll have 3, 4 stripes. They've been doing it a couple of years, but they do it like 4 or 5 times a day,
Uh,
every single day, 7 days a week, never take a break. They lift all these weights. They're young and athletic, and
yeah.
they just beat the crap out of me. It's like, what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many factors that go in to like who's the best and stuff like that, and a
Yeah.
lot of it's money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you like the tournament style they used to use in the early days?
Of the UFC.
Yeah, and Pride did
Yeah,
it too. Pride did
Max
tournaments,
as well.
didn't
Yeah,
they?
they did. Yeah, I liked it. I just felt like it was a little bit more exciting. It's not as safe though. Like the one
Yeah,
thing about the way fights are done now is they're a little bit they're safer because the fights are spread out.
yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons I like the organization PFL
Okay, what's that
over the
stand for?
UFC is Pride Fight League, I think,
Oh,
or I think that's it.
is
That
it
might be wrong.
Japanese?
No, it's an American company.
Okay,
Um,
PFL. I'll check it
so
out.
yeah, you have to check it out. So
Are
so
there
the
any free
UFC.
fights? Is it free to watch some other fights?
I think it is. I think a lot of their stuff streams on Amazon Prime or something,
Okay, okay.
and then you can get like I think if you have like a UFC subscription through their app or whatever, you used to be able to watch it on there. They're kind of changing stuff, but
Oh, okay.
um,
I'll check
they're
them out.
becoming more and more successful, so they're getting a bit more independent and
Okay.
whatever. But so the UFC now, I don't know if you've noticed, it's hard to track who's who. And like I said, you watch them sandbag fighters where they just don't get fights.
Uh,
And then all of a sudden you end up at the end of a year and it's like so and so is going to get the belt, and you're like,
what?
but why? Like he had one fight this year, but he gets
Yeah.
to go for the belt.
Uh-huh.
And it never makes any sense, and it's because media kind of talks and they're arranging things. Some years it makes a lot of sense. Some years it makes no sense. Some years you're kind of like, I guess. But the PFL is basically the early UFC days in the sense that it's tournament based.
Okay.
but it's spread out over time. So because
Nice.
there's laws now about how
Frequently
soon
you can fight. Yeah.
how frequently you can fight, especially if you get a concussion
Ooh.
or you get knocked out. Like the number of weeks or months expands before you can get back in the ring, and so there's all that stuff they have to play with.
They
So what
fight
they
in a ring in the it's a square
yeah,
ring and
yeah, it's in an octagon,
okay. Okay.
just like the UFC. But uh, they have a season. It's always a year, and what you do is you get points for as you go along. So
Uh,
if I remember, like if you win in the first round, you get 6 points. They call it the quick
okay.
six. So if you knock out or submit your opponent in the first round, you get
Ah.
6 points.
Ah.
If you win the fight in the second round, I think it's 3. And then if you win the fight, I don't remember exactly, like in the third round, it's 2 if you win by knockout or 1 if you win by decision. Something like that. Like I don't
Okay.
remember exactly, but there's like different types of wins net you a certain amount of
Right.
points. And
Right.
then you fight everybody. It's like playoffs.
Nice.
And so you
Nice.
fight everybody, you get these points, and then you go into compete for like the belt for
That sounds
that.
really cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the way it should be. Like that's how it should be. And
Yeah,
that lends itself also to like, these fantasy leagues or whatever they do, they can make up
yeah.
these, you know?
As like my kids, we watch a lot of PFL because of Kayla Harrison. I don't know if you know who she is.
No.
She's an Olympic. She was the first American athlete to win a gold medal in the Olympics for judo.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and
Oh, did you mention her when we were talking about Ronda Rousey? Did you mention
yeah,
her? Yeah.
yeah. So she's pretty big. But it's fun. So we watch the PFL. And my kids, they've got like in the different weight classes, they know these fighters and they got the people they like for whatever reason. I don't know why he looks cool. He has pink hair, so he's dumb, whatever it is, and, but they can actually track, like they're able to understand and see like, okay, he won. So he got this many points. And by the time you get to the finals and people are competing for the belt and the big cash prize, my kids know like, oh yeah, like this person, they're there because they won this many fights and have this many points, and then they can even like amongst themselves, they'll like bet candy or whatever, like half their donut, like this person's gonna win because they have this many more points than the other person, so they're a better, as a viewer, it's just more fun.
Have you ever placed a bet on a fighting event of any kind, boxing or whatever?
Yeah.
No? I did once. I did once with and you'll understand why in a moment. It was Conor McGregor boxing, the greatest boxer of all time.
Oh yeah,
I
I
thought,
should.
hey, if I'm gonna place a bet, this is the time to do it. Like, and I won. I won.
I feel like everybody probably betted for the
What's
most
the
part
guy's name?
direction.
Who's the boxer?
Pacho?
TNT, the black dude, the defensive boxer.
Oh yeah.
You know him. Best defensive boxer ever.
Yeah, it was Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the all-time greats, no?
Yeah, he's one of the all-time greats. Yeah.
Whether you love him or hate him, I mean, I happen to enjoy watching him fight, but I'm not a huge boxing
an amazing
fan.
boxer. I mean, I don't know why people would hate on him.
But anyway, I thought that was a complete joke. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you stepping in the boxing ring with this guy?
Yeah.
This is a
It's
joke.
one of those, I think UFC fighters, MMA fighters in general, I should say, have this thing they've built up where society, these are real fights. It's like, no, they're not. You wear a cup. It gets paused if you get kicked in the groin. You can't eye gouge. You can't bite. You can't break bones. You can't, you have tap outs. You have all this stuff. And even like in most organizations, if you have 3 points of contact, you can't kick them in the head. Like there's rules and rules. It's not that the fights aren't real or that the fighters aren't good, but it's a sport. At the end of the day, it's a sport. And you train to specialize in that. You understand the strategy. And you're going to throw boxing gloves on and fight in a completely different sport under a different rule set. You're out of your league. Like,
it's just true. What'd you think of Kimbo Slice?
Kimbo Slice, did he
Street Fighter, black dude. He died. He passed away. He was a real sweetheart though. Gold. Yeah. He had the gold teeth, and he was. Yeah. You remember him?
I do remember him now. That was like early days.
Street fighting, backyard fights. Remember?
Yeah.
I never watched those backyard fights because it's too violent.
They're very, yeah. There's a big one out there on YouTube. oh man, what is it called?
Is
I
it
can't even.
bare knuckle? There's a bare knuckle competition now that's more like UFC style, but they don't wear gloves. Do you know about that?
I've heard about that, and I never like to watch those
No, no,
because
no, it's
without
disgusting.
the safety for fighters, it kind
It's
of is
disgusting.
glorified violence. It's disgusting. So, but there's one called Street Beefs. That's the one
Okay,
I was thinking of, and they're they got gloves on. They basically follow the UFC
okay,
rules. It's a little more tailored down. Like they
yeah,
don't. They try not knockouts happen occasionally, but the goal is to not. They don't really allow the knockouts. I think,
okay,
based on
okay.
but they'll do different things. Like some of it's street beefs. Like people have problems with each other, so they're like, "Oh, I could beat you up." So it's like, "Come on down. We got a ref. There's a rule set, and you can pick. Like you can do just boxing. You can do
Okay.
kickboxing. You can do
Okay.
just grappling or whatever." But
Ah.
it's like
Ah.
it started as like this local community thing of guys being like, "All right, come settle your beef." And at the end of it, like you're gonna be friends, and it's kind of funny to watch. Like these guys
Yeah.
will come in, they're so
What's
mad
it
at each
called?
other. Street beefs.
Street beefs. I'm gonna check that out. So it's not too disturbing.
It's not too disturbing. Particularly, they've gotten better about like what they're doing in the more recent
It's
ones. So
been going
it's,
for a couple of years, or
I think for like 7 or 8 years. Yeah,
really? Wow. Because
yeah,
I've been out of touch. Like I said, I've been out of touch since China bought the UFC. I basically checked out. I've watched a few big fights, but yeah, I've really sort of toned down because I was sort of obsessed with it for a while there.
yeah. You
But
got to check out PFL and One. Those are
yeah.
those are my go tos.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
So I hope you come back and talk to me again. I gotta go to see the wife. Thanks for coming on a bit earlier
yeah,
because it helps me out a lot. I'm gonna be able to get some more sleep tonight. And
for sure.
but it was excellent meeting you. Next time we'll talk more about the Catholic faith. I just wanted to,
Yeah,
chat about MMA since it's so rare to meet someone that's into it, and
yeah.
you do it. You're a practitioner. It's amazing.
And I own a
So
company. We didn't really talk about that.
do it,
Oh,
yeah. Plug it now
this
because
is
my friend in the live chat says, my friend Pine Sap. I want to give a shout out to him. He popped by. He said he's excited to hear about you, and that he is going to buy something from your website. So, what's your website, and what are you selling?
Yeah, so it's Catholic Fightwear. Just kind of the short story is essentially I was running my gym, and my kids have been doing this since like all of them do it since they were born, and like all the cool like rash guards and like patches and whatever you out there that look cool, like they look BA, it's like it's like demons or like these bloody samurais or
Right,
like
demonic
Greek
stuff.
gods. It's all
Yeah.
demonic, yeah, pagan stuff, and uh, most of my gym, like 98% of my students are Catholic.
No way.
It's really cool. Yeah, they come from the two local parishes. It's really neat. And one guy was like, it'd be neat if we had some Catholic gear, like get some saints on there, like slaying the devil or something. And I was like, I could do this. So yeah, so I started a website. All the rash guards and everything are Catholic themed. So it's like I make some T-shirts. This is like it's the jujitsu belts, but in a cross, so it says cross face. But it's
Cool.
and
Crossface is one of the orientations.
well, yeah, it's like when you put your shoulder or your elbow in someone's face. Yeah, it's just a
Okay.
move you do to control them so they can't turn into you. And then yeah, like my son, his favorite is Saint Michael slaying the devil. Like it's
Ah,
just spear coming down and it makes a nice rash guard. So it's pretty fun. And now my gym is just littered with these rash guards, and I've
cool.
I've really got people around the country buying stuff, and so it's kind of neat to see it out there.
Catholic. What's the name of the website?
CatholicFightwear.com.
All one word, like all stuck together. Catholic
Yep,
Fightwear.
all stuck together. Yeah,
Okay.
CatholicFightwear.com.
I'll put the link. I think I may have already put the link in the description. But yeah, real a pleasure meeting you, and I hope to talk to you again. And
Yeah, for
keep
sure.
in touch. Keep in touch, like and let me know, like if boss gets back to you if you email him, and if you know any MMA people, even if it's just straight up BJJ people that are
Yeah.
Catholic or Protestant or obsessed with whatever worldview they have, even if they're Scientologists, send them my way and I'll interview them.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks a
All right,
lot.
my brother. So I'll see you on Twitter. Take good care and please pray for me and mine. I enroll my guests in a perpetual mass. You're going to get the benefits of that, the graces of the mass every
Oh, thank
day. every day till the end of time. You and your family, parents, spouse, siblings, children,
Awesome.
living or dead until the end of time. So just remember me and mine in your prayers, okay?
I will. Will do. Thanks so much.
Take good care. We'll
All
talk
right.
soon. God bless.